A short time ago, in a galaxy not far enough away, Revan was trending on Twitter. Because gatekeepers, man. All kidding aside, I don't have a problem with Revan, I'm just not very passionate about them. However, the last time a beloved Legends character was trending, it was one I very much care about. Mara Jade. What surprised me back then was realizing just how divisive she had become over the years. Because long before Disney and long before the Clone Wars, she was arguably the most well-liked character outside of the movies themselves. Nowadays, not so much. Of course, as far as prominence goes, that is not really surprising. But I was surprised about her popularity with the fans. Now, it didn't take long until I noticed that a lot of people arguing against her and a lot of people arguing for her hadn't actually read any of her stories. And I think there's a bit of an issue that concerns Star Wars Legends as a whole. Because everyone and their mom have an opinion on Star Wars Legends, in the Star Wars community at least. But not everyone has actually taken the time to read these books or play these games. And I'm not the first one to point it out either. Believe it or not, skimming through Wikipedia or clicking on some stupid ass top 10 crazy things that happened in Star Wars Legends article is just not the same as having read the thing. And fair enough, there's no real reason for new fans to go back and dive into stories and characters that have no bearing on the content they are here for. But maybe ease up on trashing it then? Likewise, I feel like a large portion of the "not my Luke" crowd seem to base their praise for Mara specifically just on the fact that she married Luke, who in Legends lived on as a Grandmaster rather than exiling himself as seen in the sequel trilogy. And because I take issue with both these stances, I decided to, quote-unquote, set the record straight. I should add that I haven't read every single story that features Mara either, but I've read 20-something-ish, so I think that should do. If you have read some of those stories, or maybe even more than I did, then you probably won't learn anything new from this video. I don't have some special insight and I'm not trying to change your opinion, no matter what your opinion is. If you love her, high five. If you hate her, shame. If you're indifferent about her, that's cool too. Mainly, I hope to introduce the character to people who otherwise only know her because some chuckle fuck with big titty fan art of her as his profile picture yelled at them on Twitter for saying a nice thing about Rose Tico or whatever else. With that out of the way, let's begin with the introduction. Part 1. Who the f*** even is Mara Jade? In short, I describe her as a cross between Asajj Ventress and Synara from Star Wars Resistance. The professional tough girl who, over the course of the story, transitions into a better version of herself, without ever completely losing a bit of that edge that sets her apart from the main heroes. But you may come to a different conclusion than I did, so I'll just briefly go over her history before I dive into what I'd call common misconceptions. Her first appearance is in the 1991 book Heir to the Empire. We first get to meet her during a business meeting with Talon Karrde, her boss during the time, and while the scene is short and paints her as this distant and mysterious person, we get to know that she has some ties to the Empire and that she hates Luke Skywalker. A little later in the book, Luke goes back to Dagobah and enters the dark side cave again. Once again he has a vision there, except this time it's a memory of sorts. He finds himself back on Jabba's barge, looking down at the Sarlacc pit, about to get thrown into it, or rather about to go all Jedi Master on the scum there and just kill them all. Except this time the lightsaber does not land in his hands, the lightsaber lands in the hands of a mysterious woman who we cannot see that well due to the sunlight. The comic, meanwhile, is much less subtle about the fact that it's, obviously it's Mara. With Luke's rescue spoiled, the vision ends. Later in the book, Karrde's crew finds Luke Skywalker's damaged X-Wing floating in space and save his life. We learn that it's Mara who found him. Karrde doesn't know how, but we as readers at this point know she probably used the Force. Later, when Luke escapes captivity in Karrde's base, he's pursued by Mara. And when he tries a daring flying maneuver, he fucks up and both vessels crash. This actually leads to one of my all-time favorite Star Wars moments, because Luke, ever the hero, goes to check on Mara, opens her cockpit just to stare into the barrel of a blaster, because she knew he'd be coming, of course he would. And she used it to her advantage. And I don't know, I really like that scene. Call me crazy. Now circumstances dictate that the two of them have to work together to survive the forest, and so the Imperials don't find them. I love the dynamic here, because Luke doesn't have anything against her and remains infuriatingly calm. He even saves her life at some point. Mara meanwhile doesn't even dare closing her eyes around him and holds him at gunpoint most of the time. Eventually she reveals that she was an Imperial agent, and yes, she was the person that was supposed on the barge, but Jabba found out that something was off and stopped her from tagging along. And yes, you heard that right, Jabba could have saved his own life and doomed our heroes had he been less suspicious about her. Oh well, the irony. Anyway, Mara explains that she was sent by the Emperor to kill him. He changed his mind later, as we know, and tried to seduce Luke to the dark side, but Mara didn't know that. Because in the moment of his death, good old Papa Palpatine sent her a final order via the telepathic link. You will kill Luke Skywalker. Having been a secret operative called the Emperor's Hand, not many people in the Empire knew about her existence. And when Sidious died, so did the life she had known. Her home, her possessions, her rank, none of it mattered anymore. And to top things off, she suffered from nightmares as good old Papa Palps haunted her dreams for years, urging her to kill Luke. Said dreams returned in full force later in the Thrawn trilogy now that Luke had entered her life. But between Grand Admiral Thrawn and the crazy Dark Jedi Master Savayoff, she was forced to work with not only Luke but also Leia, Han and others for a while longer. Before the trilogy ends, she finds out that Luke didn't kill the Emperor after all, and that Vader had been his father, which makes her realize that this final order by her former master is nothing but petty revenge against Vader himself. During the final confrontation with Savayoff, he reveals a clone created from Luke's lost hand in The Empire Strikes Back, wielding Luke's old lightsaber. The infamous Luke Skywalker, with twice the amount of use. While he fights the real Luke, Mara simply swoops in and stabs him, ridding herself of Palpatine's last command. By the end of the trilogy, she and Luke are not necessarily friends, but they're not enemies anymore either. She even gets to keep the legacy lightsaber, much like Rey did in the sequels. She would wield the lightsaber up until her untimely demise at the hands of Jacen Solo. And I actually quite enjoyed that scene back then. Not only was it dramatic as hell and one badass fight, it also cemented Jacen Solo as Darth Caedus. Yeah, she kinda went out in the blaze of glory and I can't fault that. But all of that happened much later down the line. Either way, Mara stuck around as one of the more important non-movie characters, featuring prominently in more books and even a video game spin-off in which he won the final confrontation with a corrupted teacher Kyle Katarn by deactivating her lightsaber, giving Kyle the chance to kill her. But the good inside him won and he fell to his knees instead, realizing just how far he had fallen. I think that's a cool touch given her past as a spy and assassin type. Further tales, all written by her inventor Timothy Zahn, actually shed some light on her past before the Thrawn trilogy, which are among my favorite stories of her because it's usually a pretty great mix of cloak and dagger stuff and some explosive action. Furthermore, the locations range from seedy pirate bases all the way up to imperial palaces, which brings some variety to the table, and we see that much like Callus from Star Wars Rebels, Mara was never necessarily evil. Ruthless for sure, brutal sometimes, evil not so much. Having basically been raised by the Empire, she believes whatever she's doing is for the greater good. 10 years after her first appearance, she eventually married Luke Skywalker. As I've mentioned in my video about the very book that happened in, it was one of the two things Timothy Zahn insisted on happening, much to the dismay of George Lucas, who it seems hated the idea. Now, keep in mind these books came out before the prequel trilogy. There's a reason Legends looks so odd from afar, because its roots come from a time that lacked the context the prequels brought in. Love them or hate them, the prequel trilogy gave us a better look at the rest of the galaxy than any of the other movies have done. But with that out of the way, let's take a look at the actual topic of this video. Number 1. George Lucas hated her. Yes indeed, he did. And so what? George also hated The Force Awakens, while having good things to say about Dark Empire of all things. His favorite Clone Wars arc is the insufferable droid team-up arc that is not really that beloved by fans, so point is, it doesn't matter what George thinks. I love the guy, he created the whole thing, but that does not mean that I have to see eye to eye with him on every topic, and neither do you. Number 2. She's just a trophy wife. So that is the big one for me. Saying that ignores basically every story that is set before their marriage. They didn't really have anything romantic going on up until then. I mentioned that it felt a little rushed in my review of The Hand of Thrawn, and I stand by that. But They had known each other for 10 years at that point, and there's a lot of stories set before they even met each other. Despite Zan admitting that he always planned for her to become Luke's love interest in the long run, if that was all she was meant to be, he wouldn't have written so many books, comics and short stories set before all of that happened. He only wrote a single book featuring them as husband and wife, so I don't really see it. And it is not like their marriage was a one-sided thing. Legends Luke is oftentimes considered by many a bit of a walking and talking power fantasy, and to an extent, and depending on the writer of course, that is not wrong. Mara meanwhile, thanks to Timothy Zahn's rather subdued style, was always someone who had to claw and crawl for her success. She almost always got the job done, no matter how hard, but she rarely escaped unscathed because she just wasn't perfect. She wasn't a chosen one type like Luke, Anakin or Rey, and had to be crafty and clever. Nothing shows that better than a short tussle she had with Vader himself, who by the way hated her guts. Mara was just a much more grounded person whose perspective was far different from Luke, who was basically the Master Yoda of his time, shouldering the weight of the world, or in his case, the universe. And his relationship with a more pragmatic person like Mara humanized him. This wasn't the demigod with model wife situation so many people make it out to be. Number 3. She's just a hot chick, written for men specifically. Well, I'm a guy and I'm making this video, so clearly it worked. Kidding aside, I don't agree, and I don't think Zahn would agree considering everything I just said about him. But I can't say it's not something that was never on another author's mind. Reading the Jedi Academy trilogy by Kevin J. Anderson gave me some major man writing women vibes at times. While it wasn't just Mara who suffered from that treatment, she was definitely the one where it was most apparent. It certainly did not help that Lando, who is meant to be charming usually, outright lusted after her in a rather creepy fashion. Here we stumble upon the issue that every shared character eventually runs into. Different writers have different interpretations of character, and so do artists. Was she meant to be attractive? Did Zahn ever clarify that? Well, yeah, we can safely assume she was, considering she infiltrated Jabba's palace as a dancer. But it never really came up in missions, and I can only think of one example where what I call NPC commented on it. So I wouldn't call it a defining characteristic, at least not in Zahn's eyes. And if being pretty is a no-go, then I have some bad news for you regarding some Star Wars characters. Montage time! Jokes aside, I get that some characters are intended to sex up the story or certain scenes, but I don't think I recall Mara ever really being used in that way, unlike Padme, Leia, Ben Solo, or basically every Twilight woman ever not called Hera Syndulla. Number 4. She doesn't look very Star Warsy to me. Yeah, because it was the 90s. The world of superhero comics looked like this, and Star Wars usually wasn't much better. All things considered, I don't think Mara's look comes off nearly as dated as the likes of Dash Rendar, but yeah, in Star Wars you either wore a jumpsuit or cool jackets or both, and it's not like she wore the same stuff 24/7 anyway. In a way, I think it's kinda charming that you can see trends from the time influencing how the Star Wars universe looked. But I can totally see why that rubs some people the wrong way, because there are certainly Star Wars designs that look totally off to me as well. A good example would be most of the ancient Sith Lords from the Old Republic, or a lot of the droid designs for the Clone Wars show. But in the end it's all subjective, who even gives a shit? Number 5. Luke should not have a wife. Hey, that rhymed. George agrees. Me? I don't care. I'm very take it or leave it on that front. I think it's silly to reduce her to the role of the wife, as I mentioned earlier. Do we treat Leia and Han the same way? The answer is no, we do not. And again, that all happened before the prequel trilogy introduced the concept of a Jedi just not doing that. But really, Anakin had a wife, Rey had the romance that I don't like to think about, Kanan had Hera, Cal Kestis might have something with Marin, we don't know yet. Ava Chris and Elsa Mann are more than just friends. And those are just some examples. So I don't see why it's such a big deal for us as fans. I mean, the in-universe implications are another matter of course, but anyway. Me, I'm just happy she stuck around. Because in case you haven't noticed, I really like her. Pairing her up with one of the main heroes ensured she'd always have a role, even when that eventually meant the role of the sacrifice. Yes, I am still sad. Anyway, moving on. Number 6. She's such a boring cliché. She's certainly an archetype character, but between cool guy, princess in peril, Merlin and King Arthur, I don't think the somewhat unapproachable tough girl is really something to look down on. I'd even argue she added another layer to the team and complemented its overall composition much like Zuko did when he joined Team Avatar. Furthermore, she subverted her own hardest trope constantly, be it with loyalty to people like Card or being a rather merciful Imperial for someone whose job it is to kill people, or admitting to Luke that she was scared shitless of Sabayov. Number 7, she's just girl Han Solo. I don't know where that one is coming from, but I've seen it take a lot, even among Legends fans, and if you can explain that one to me, go ahead, I'm listening. But in my mind, they are very different people. I'll give you, they are both Imperials turned smugglers turned Republic heroes. But it was never a defining part of Han's past that he was an Imperial. Meanwhile, it basically defined the first few decades of Mara's life. And even as smugglers, they are two very different people. Han was a freelancer working with his best bud, while Mara was the right hand to Talon Card, who is basically a good-hearted CEO type. Personality-wise, they aren't the same either. Sure, both had a bit of an edge when compared to the Skywalker twins. But while Han is the hot-headed, loudmouth type who stumbles from one misadventure to the next, Mara is always calm and collected, thinks things through, and usually gets shit done by being clever and also very persistent. And let's be real. Much like everyone in Clone Wars is either a Jedi, clone or politician, everyone in Legends was either a Jedi, smuggler or pilot. That was just the name of the game. Number 8. She's the Poochie of the Star Wars universe. Poochie refers to a character from The Simpsons who is a parody of a try-hard cool guy or girl that's added to an already existing story and usually rejected by the audience. And in this case, it's just nonsense. Apart from the fact that you want to take a closer look at ancient Sith Lords, Savage Opress or the Mandalorian's very own Death Watch, if you wanted to take a look at, try-hard characters, you would also be wrong about the audience's perception of Mara. Like, there's a reason clickbait sites like Nerdist or Screen Rant or nonsense YouTubers like Mike Zero bring her up constantly, because there's a desire of people to see her return. Which leads us to number 9. They'd never bring her back. Up until The Mandalorian I would have agreed with you. I made my peace with that fact a long time ago, or so I thought. Because shortly after Luke's appearance at the end of Season 2, when we saw Jabba's palace, my mind revived the shimmer of hope I had thought dead and buried for years. The first time Mara crossed paths with our heroes was in Jabba's palace, and I was kind of hoping to see a flashback to the scene. Instead, we got this. Which I never thought I'd be hooked for, but I like this version of Boba actually. Anyway, my mind didn't stop thinking about other possibilities of a grand return for Mara ever since that moment. And why wouldn't it? Between Thrawn's comeback, Shadow Troopers showing up, and characters like Raven being readied for comeback, why wouldn't the same be true for Mara? Other than Jacen Solo, Jaina Solo, Anakin Solo, or Ben Skywalker, aka the children from the Legends books, it isn't completely out of the question for some other characters to return. Sure, Canon Luke obviously didn't marry anyone, otherwise we'd have heard of it by now. But as I mentioned before, Mara was a lot more than just Luke's wife. There's no need to repeat the stories that came before, but you can still use some of the characters in new ways. I mean, the MCU, the biggest pop culture thing on the planet, is based on adaptations. So let us move on to the final part of this video. Because by now you know who she is, you know who she is not. But now, let's talk about who she could be. Let's talk about how canon could benefit from her. Part 3. How and why you would bring her back. The Bad Batch. Simple, Mara was brought into the Empire at a very young age and practically raised there. The Bad Batch have a kid along for the ride. The bad guys adopting one themselves would mirror that in a way. Granted, in Legends Mara wasn't born until 2 years after the Clone Wars ended, but that could be changed or it could be something that happens later in the show. It isn't out yet and we don't know how long it will last. Who knows? Maybe we'll even see Omega becoming a teenager over the course of the show. It's all speculation. Granted, this is probably my weakest pitch, but man, if the batch runs into some guy or girl called Jade, you can bet your ass they're gonna portray someone's parent. And I also wouldn't get too attached to them. It would be a chance to portray Palpatine as this benevolent ruler he tried to sell to Ezra. Ezra of course didn't fall for it, but a small child? Probably. The Jedi Fallen Order sequel. Jedi Fallen Order saw a survivor of the Jedi Purge, aka Order 66, being hunted by Inquisitors. The Inquisitors we also know from Star Wars Rebels. Cal Kestis, Ser Junda, and Night Sister Merrin were looking for a holocron containing names of Force-sensitive children. Cal eventually decided against pursuing them, because they'd just be an easier target for the Empire. But the story thread of Force-sensitive children is not one I assume we will abandon. The first game, Mara would be 3 years old, I believe, so if the next one was set 2 or 3 years later, she'd be the right age to begin her training. Ever since we were introduced to the canon version of the Inquisitors, fans have been pitching Mara as one of them. With Mara as a trainee there, we could see just how Inquisitors were trained. And I don't know about you, but I'm up for that. The Cassian Andor Show. Rebel spy meets Imperial spy? Sign me up. Sure, Mara would be a teenager around the time rather than an adult, but it's not like the Emperor waited till she was 18 before sending her on missions in Legends. Why would that be different in canon? And being on the run from someone who can use the Force would not only add some sense of danger to whatever mission Cassian is on, it would also serve as some connective tissue to the bigger Star Wars universe. The Ahsoka Show. Luke Skywalker, Ahsoka Tano, probably Ezra Bridger, potentially the Mantis crew. That is a lot of Jedi or Jedi-like good guys, yet there are no signs of opponents for them. And I refuse to believe that the universe went decades without a single lightsaber clash after the destruction of the second Death Star. I consider it a given that someone will show up to take the fight to the good guys in one way or another. And I think the Ahsoka Show would be a good way to introduce such a character. And whose first appearance in Legends was set around the same time as The Mandalorian and most of the coming shows? Exactly. Honestly, I try not to get my hopes up too high for anything, but this is the most likely scenario where I could see that happening. We need some bad guys here, simple as that. She is one of them, kind of. Pre-sequel material. Okay, this one is vague, but let's assume Mara exists and isn't an enemy to Luke, maybe even an ally of sorts. Eventually we'll get into the story of him who stepped out of a pickle jar, Snoke himself. It's the reverse kind of deal from the previous pitch. Snoke might need someone to clash with, might as well be Mara, right? Furthermore, in Legends she felt Jacen Solo falling to the dark side and set out to do what Luke pondered doing in the flashback scene in The Last Jedi. Clearly she didn't try her luck in canon, but I could see Luke being in denial for too long and Mara telling him to watch out for Ben Solo because she could feel a darkness inside him. Personally, I'd never had a problem with Luke having this moment of weakness that led to the creation of Kylo Ren, but it certainly wouldn't hurt if we knew someone was pushing him to take care of the matter one way or another. It wouldn't even be a retcon, more like an additional motivation. And yes, I saw the pitch that she should have been killed by Kylo Ren at Luke's temple, but due to the Rise of Kylo Ren comic, soft retconning how the other Jedi died, taking out all the oomph out of Kylo Ren's school shooter parallels, I don't see that happening. And I don't think bringing her back just to kill her off again like this would be a great idea. Instead, post-sequels. This one is baseless, but I've had that thought since forever now. It even predates that moment I had while watching The Mandalorian. So, hear me out. In Legends, Han, Luke and Leia survived everything. 2 of their 4 children died, Luke's wife died, Chewbacca died, the Nogri died, but the 3 of them survived everything. Now, in canon, Han, Leia and Luke are all dead. Chewie is still there, and while Wedge and Lando also stuck around until the end, we have no one who could mentor Rey. Filoni played coy whether Ahsoka is really dead or not, and I don't think she is. But by that point in time she's already done it all, hasn't she? And she'd be really damn old too. Now, let's say any of my pitches above, or more than one, or something completely different that involves Mara Jade, come true. That would mean we have, potentially, another old lady hanging around somewhere. One who knows the way of the Force, but more importantly, one who could help Rey avoiding whatever mistakes led to Luke's failure at the Academy. Why wasn't she around helping during the sequels? Well, same reason Ahsoka wasn't around helping during the original trilogy. She wasn't part of the universe yet. And as far as in-universe reasons go, she could have returned to life as a smuggler, she could have felt guilty for either not being around at Luke's school when that thing happened, or pushing him to do it. Or she could have stumbled upon Exegol. Maybe she was found out and Palpatine kept her prisoner there for years. One way or another, being a fan of Legends as well as canon, I think it would be an amazing symbolic gesture if one of the defining Legends characters served as some sort of advisor or mentor or guiding light for Rey as she revives the Jedi Order once more. This concludes my pitches. But to round off this segment, I want to give you 2 more reasons, out of universe reasons, why you would want to consider bringing Mara back into canon. The first one is quite simple: popularity. I'm not sure I mentioned it enough, but Mara was crazy popular back in the day. I know we called him of Isan's first trilogy the Thrawn trilogy, but Mara was as much a main character as he was. And other than him, she also stuck around. Star Wars has brought back Darth Maul after the most definitive death imaginable, and even threw in a yellow version of himself as a bonus. Boba Fett has returned twice now. Ahsoka featured heavily in Star Wars Rebels and is getting her own live action show. Thrawn was brought back for Star Wars Rebels and it was awesome. Why stop there? Of course Mara is not as big of a deal as those, but there's a reason clickbait sites and so-called scoopers on YouTube like Mike Zero bring Mara up again and again and again and again and again and again and again, because there's still demand. If done right, Mara could be more popular than it has ever been in the past, giving a whole new generation of fans, and older ones who didn't like reading, a chance to experience the character. And, with canon branching out a little more than Legends has, you could tell a whole new set of stories with her. Reason number 2, and that is the big one. Nowadays, when I look in the comment section of Mara fan art or when I see users being named after her on Twitter or Reddit, I often see the angry kind of fanboys or fangirls. Mara being heralded as a quote-unquote good female character other than Mary Sue or Rose Tico, because we have to put women, fictional or not, against one another for reasons I'll never understand. Now, admittedly, especially in the prequel and Clone Wars crowd, it's a lot more usual to make these comparisons with Ahsoka, because she's just a much bigger deal. But I do not dread reading comment sections under Ahsoka fan art or any other content really, because while there are so very many shit takes by the very same angry chuckle fucks, you also have a lot more sane people commenting there, since on average, casual fans are just much more pleasant than die-hard fans. So wouldn't it be nice if we took a beloved character like Mara and make her accessible to a wider variety of fans, both old and new? Because I think it would. At the same time, not everyone who doesn't like the sequels or misses the characters from the stories they grew up with is automatically some fandom menace shithead or whatever have you. It's so easy to fall into this kind of us versus them thinking in these fandom debates. You tend to forget that before Disney bought Lucasfilm, these books, comics, video games, what have you, that were called Legends, were everything fans who wanted to dive deeper had. Now picture this. If the roles were reversed and what's now canon would be considered Legends and what's now Legends would be the new canon. Would you not like to see a scavenger named Rey finding a lightsaber? Would you not like to see a trooper removing his helmet and revealing himself to be Finn? Would you not like to see K2SO slapping Cassian on the back of the head? Would you not like to see the Ghost fly again? Would you not like to play as Cal Kestis again? Would you not like to see Din Djarin holding Grogu again? I know I would. And I'd also like to meet the Emperor's hand again, in whatever way I can get. But we've moved far enough from the original topic of this video, so I'll just call it right here and there. If you've kept watching up until now, thanks mom. No, seriously. Thanks for watching and may the force be with you.